It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
Off and running, welcome in. Another edition here of Musso at the box. We inch ever so closer to opening day. That is Friday, Valentine's Day against Purdue Fort Wayne. Now just 2 days away from LSU opening up the 2025 season in search for national championship number 8. As we inch closer, we obviously continue to check things off of our list that we've previewed and or surmised about, all those types of deals that we've gone through, all our recaps from the scrimmages and everything. And now we arrive at the day where we talk the lineup, the projected lineup. I have one for you. I will give it out. I feel pretty good about the players in it. The order I have them lined up in, we'll see. That's why every time we do this every year, I say, here's my projected starting lineup, which is certain to be wrong, and that is no different here in 2025 this season. The difference is we do know certain things that Jay Johnson has confirmed about the lineup, which is odd because Jay Johnson does not like to tip his hand ever, whether it is game number 1 or game 56 or game 3 in Omaha. He just never likes to tip his hand ever. So when he does that, you pay attention, to say the least. And that dealt with the left side of the infield. So we'll dive in, give some thoughts on that as well here today. So fired up for the show. Be sure to smash that like button. As a matter of fact, if you have not already, get subscribed to the YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast app. Wherever you get your podcast, just search Musso at the box. Right there. Take the show with you wherever you go. Follow me on social media. Of course, those handles scrolling below on the screen. You can also find me on Facebook, Matt Musso. All that is greatly appreciated. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. And we will start actually with the left side of the infield and thoughts there. I'll tell you, it's not much different thoughts than I've had here in the past, but Jay Johnson on Tuesday in an interview, Kendall Rogers and I believe Mike Scarborough confirmed that they will start Stephen Milam at short and Michael Braswell at third. I don't want to say this has been a worst kept secret type of thing, but I think the writing was always on the wall that that's the direction they wanted this to go. I don't think you even entertain this move if that's not really the direction that you wanted it to go. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that's the way it's going to be all season long. There is a very real possibility you could see Michael Braswell get some time at shortstop still maybe Stephen Milam try his hand at third. But for the majority of the games, this is what you're going to get. And this is, again, it's what they were hoping it would track toward. And ultimately it did. Both guys got to play the position in the spring. I mean, there were times I was out there at scrimmages and you saw them on different teams so they could both play short. But every time, I shouldn't say every time, the majority of the time, all but once that I was out there that they were on the same team, did you not see Milam at short, Braswell at third? One time when they were on the same team was that not the lineup. And even in that game, halfway through, they switched. So in terms of what this looks like for LSU from a performance standpoint, I feel pretty good about it. I think if you've listened to this show by now, including parts of last year, you know I love the idea of Stephen Milam at shortstop. I think he has the tools to play that position and play it very well in the SEC. The arm for me is there. It is good enough. I mean, is it the best arm that LSU's had at shortstop? No, but it's good enough. More than good enough, I think. He's quick twitch. He's got the range to his left and his right. And we talked about the plays he made in that Sunday scrimmage. I think the accuracy when it comes to the arm is overlooked a little bit. Everything is at least around the bag, and more often than not, it hits the first baseman in the chest. But just being around the bag is important on this LSU team because Jared Jones is a really, 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 really good defensive first baseman, and he's going to dig a lot of the balls out that maybe are low or a tad wide, get it around the bag. I think Stephen Milam does that great. As I said, the arm is there, and offensively, he will be a really good option and solid player and one of LSU's best hitters, actually more than likely on this team. So for me, that fits a lot. Michael Braswell at third base. Well, let's see. He played short, so he's got the arm to play third. I think his throws from there have been really good, at least the ones that I've seen. The way I would describe Braswell at third, and again, I don't want this to sound like a cop out because I don't mean it that way, but he looks comfortable. Like he just looks comfortable there. There's something about it where it just goes, okay, yeah, that kind of fits. And I love the idea of having a veteran guy there replacing Tommy White. Michael Braswell's going into his 4th year of college baseball. So I love that idea as well. Not that Stephen Milam's not a veteran, and I consider him one. He played 62 games a season ago for LSU, somewhere in that realm. Forgive me, I don't have the stat sheet pulled up right in front of me from last year. So I mean, he grew up a lot, but guy, 4th year of college baseball, filling in for somebody the stature of Tommy White. I like that a lot as well, too. And Tommy obviously played a great defensive third base. So I like that alignment a lot. It's, yes, surprising that Jay Johnson confirmed that on the record and tipped his hand. Not surprising the direction that they went. Before we get into the projected starting lineup, a couple of other things. Tanner Reeves, and I know we've talked about him plenty. I just be prepared to see him this weekend when LSU plays Purdue Fort Wayne at some point. He has performed too well in the preseason and even in the fall, but in the preseason here most recently, to not get a look. Like he has pushed for reps, and I understand we're all high on Danny Dickinson. I am too. He had a really good weekend wrapping up the preseason, which I thought he needed heading into the regular season because there's been some hit or miss there with him so far. All the talent and measurables, everything you want is there. It's just, how is it going to translate? This is a step up in competition. We've had that conversation with a lot of guys. Tanner Reeves, in a sense, is in that same vein. But Reeves has performed too well, and Jay Johnson is too high on him for him not to get some run on opening weekend. I think you see number 5 out there. I think he gets a start as well, one of the days. Now, that doesn't mean Danny Dickinson leaves the lineup. You could put Dickinson at DH potentially that day. Or Reeves could play third, and you do what you will with Braswell. Maybe you put him at DH. Like, there are ways to get everyone in the lineup. That's just one thing they're going to have to figure out is the best way to do that. But that is just, we played the cut on this show back in June of 2024 when Jay Johnson talked about Tanner Reeves, and he punctuated that quote by saying, that's a type of player I've had a lot of success with. Like, he's just extremely high on him, and he should be. Like, it's a wiry strength guy, hits from the left side, can play all 3 infield positions. Javen says he's got the athleticism to play outfield. He's just that type of player, and he's, like I said, acquitted himself quite well. I think you're going to see him. I don't think it's on opening day, but I think you're going to see him. I would say that would be the one wrench that could be thrown in that would actually surprise me, is if Tanner Reeves is in the opening day lineup at second base. But I think you see him get a start on the infield in one of these first 3 games because he's earned it. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into the projected starting lineup. So in looking at the LSU offense, one thing that I've talked about here and that I like, and I know that Jay Johnson is going to like, is they have the ability, once again this year, to really alternate lefty-righty. That's something that he loves to do. It makes a lot of sense why. It eliminates, bringing in a guy potentially for a matchup, issue out of the bullpen, things of that nature. It hampers that. So you have the ability to do that a lot. You have multiple options from each side of the plate. This has the potential to be an extremely deep lineup as well. And when I actually put it down on paper, that is what jumped off the page to me. Because I kept in mind the righty-lefty alternation. I wanted that to be part of this. And in doing so, you ended up with some really good bats at the bottom of the lineup. This has a chance to be a team if everything comes together, if guys like Dickinson take that step that everybody, thinks that he can, if Chris Stanfield really takes a step with the bat like he's kind of showed, the potential to do here in the preseason and in the fall, if Derek Curiel is that freshman guy that we think he is, that he certainly looks like, and at this point I have no real reason to believe that he isn't. We just need the sample size to grow. That will provide the real answer there. I mean, at this point, the answer is what it is, and he's going to start. And then you have Jake Brown and Ashton Larson and Josh Pearson. I mean, Pearson's a veteran that is going to fit into this lineup at some place. You have Cade Aaron Beatty, you have Blaze Priester, you have all those guys that could fit into DH. This has a chance to be an extremely deep lineup. And I would be floored if it's not, because of all the options that you have. You have that many guys that you trust, that you are high on, that have the talent, that have the potential. Somebody, some combination of it has to click. It just does. I mean, the law of averages. How big is the law of averages in baseball? It has to click. If it doesn't, with some combination, not saying it's going to be the one that we go through here momentarily, but with some combination, that's going to be a real head scratcher. And it's going to be back to the drawing board. But I believe that it will. So let's kind of run through it a little bit. If you've been listening along, some of this should not be surprising. We'll start with the leadoff spot. And I think LSU has a couple options. Obviously, one of them is Chris Stanfield. Chris Stanfield is really the type of just prototypical leadoff hitter you want in baseball. The thing he has going against him is he hits right-handed. He doesn't hit from the left side. But he handles the bat well, singles, pretty good two-strike approach, can bunt, can do all of those things, is incredibly speedy, gets down the line great, even not hitting from the left-handed batter's box. Like when you looked up the history of baseball and you draw up the prototype for a leadoff guy, Chris Stanfield fits that bill. Now, when you look more at modern baseball, that leadoff guy has changed a little bit. You're wanting to get some of your best hitters multiple at bats, so you'll hit one of your best hitters lead off. You will put more power in the leadoff spot. Like Jay Johnson has talked about this. What he likes in the leadoff spot is someone who can change the scoreboard. Not necessarily just by a home run, right? Guy who can get into scoring position with one swing, doubles, and just set it up for the guys behind him, because how he stacked his lineup is having, 2 and 3 be, your other two best guys, right? Like, I mean, Dylan Cruz hit 2-hole for a while at LSU. Dylan Cruz hit leadoff for a while at LSU. You saw Tommy White hitting the 2-hole. You saw Tommy hitting the 3. Like, he wants somebody who can either jump the yard and or get himself into scoring position immediately. That brings up the other most intriguing option to me on this team for leadoff would be Danny Dickinson. And you've seen that a little bit in the scrimmages, him slot into that spot. You've seen Stanfield do it a lot too. You've seen Braswell do it. And Braswell hit leadoff for LSU a season ago throughout. So he's another option. The thing that both Dickinson and Stanfield have going for them is their speed and base running ability. They can both steal bases. So that's really a coin flip to me. What direction they go leadoff. Like, Stanfield and Dickinson can both be 20 stolen base guys this year. And that's going to be the other interesting thing with this lineup is the aggressiveness that you're going to see. You're going to see LSU steal bases this season. I firmly believe that. That's just going to be another added dimension. I think you're going to see more action with hit and runs and things of that nature because of the threat you have on the base path. So leadoff is either, for me, going to be Stanfield or Dickinson on opening day. You flip a coin. For the sake of this exercise, I went with Chris Stanfield. I think he handles the bat a little bit better than Danny Dickinson. There's less swing and miss, in my opinion, with Chris Stanfield. So I have Stanfield leading off and playing center field. I have Derek Curiel in the 2-hole playing left. I don't really think we need to regurgitate everything I've said about Derek Curiel. He looks like the next freshman phenom at LSU. He is a ascending 5-tool player. He's got 4 of the 5 in there for sure now. Power still to come, but he hit a laser over the weekend off of William Schmidt into the right field bleachers. So that can continue to come as he continues to put weight on the frame. Curiel's going to play. He's going to play a lot. It's going to take an extraordinary effort or him just falling flat on his face to unseat him from that left field spot. So I have Curiel at number 2. I have Jared Jones hitting 3rd. There's plenty of places you could hit Jones, clean up 5, like wherever. I put him in the 3-hole. I like the idea of Stanfield and Curiel getting on before Jared Jones, you having to pitch to him because there's not a base open. Maybe if you're still trying to work on figuring out the protection aspect of him in the lineup. So I have Jared Jones at the 3-hole. I have Jake Brown at cleanup and starting in right field. This should not come as a surprise if you listen to the scrimmage recap. You have to find someone to protect Jared Jones. There has to be somebody feared behind him that can change the scoreboard in more ways than one, that takes good at bats, and that you don't want to face. That is going to force you to pitch to Jared Jones, or at least make the decision, like you saw teams do with Dylan Cruz and Tommy White in 2023. This would not be to that level. Those are 2 Major League Baseball players. Not to say Jared Jones and Jake Brown aren't. Of course, they obviously will get the opportunity to prove that. But a combination of Cruz and White back-to-back in the lineup, it doesn't come around that often. But that's ultimately what you're striving for, is that dynamic, right? The weekend that Jake Brown had, where he had 7 hits and put the ball in play both times on Sunday and hit it well, showed me, okay, I'm ready for him to get the first crack at protecting Jared Jones. Will it work? I don't know. We'll see. But he's one of your hottest hitters heading into the regular season, and I want to see him get the first chance to do it. So I have Brown in the cleanup spot. Then we get to catcher, and I put catcher in the 5-hole. And y'all, we've talked plenty about catcher. Just the more you watch, I mean, it's a full week removed since we had our catcher preview. The more you watch, the more you hear, the more you listen, the more you pay attention, I think Luis Hernandez has pulled ahead there. And I think Luis Hernandez will get the opening day start at catcher, and I have him hitting 5th. That's where he slotted in the majority of these scrimmages, is right there in the middle third of the order, 4, 5, 6 in that area. So I put him in there at 6th. It's been a lot of productive outs, and the way I said it about catcher with him is he's just kind of been there. And I didn't mean that as a slight or as an insult at all. That's a compliment for a catcher. I mean, he's been that steady that you haven't really kind of noticed him. He's just made the play, and that's ultimately what you want. And I think that is the direction that they go there. So I have Hernandez catching opening day and hitting 5th. Designated hitter was a tough one. And I went with Ashton Larson just because that's a guy who hit 298 as a freshman, was your leading hitter throughout conference play for the majority of the year. It's hard to justify not having that guy in the lineup. And he's had a really nice preseason where he's had a few big multi-hit games, but he's had a couple clutch RBI hits in the scrimmages as well. All things you want from the DH. I'm very curious to see with Larson if the power makes a bit of a jump this year in his second year in college baseball. So I went with Larson. The only other option I would see there is Josh Pearson, the veteran who's played in 160 games and started 120 plus, getting the nod on opening day. But if it's not Pearson, it's Larson, and neither of them would surprise me. But I went with Larson here in this projection. Now we get to the bottom third, and this is where you really get to see the potential for the depth. So I went with Danny Dickinson at in the 7-hole, starting at second base, and I think that would obviously be a great option there for LSU, and potentially to have him in the bottom half of the order. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. 7's a good spot, too, to kind of just ease into a higher level of baseball, potentially when you see into SEC play, things of that nature. I went with Dickinson there. I had Stephen Milam at 8. Assuming you're facing a righty, he'd be to the left side. That would continue your alternating there. Y'all, Stephen Milam hit cleanup for LSU at points last year, which he doesn't belong in the cleanup spot. Don't get me wrong. But that's a guy who was just a perennial top of your order guy a season ago. And when I was just putting this out on paper and alternating left, right, and doing things, he ended up in the 8 hole. Can you imagine having Stephen Milam 8 hole? That is the definition of lineup depth. Now, I don't think that's where he ultimately slots in this lineup. I think Jay's going to have him higher. Like, let me be perfectly clear. I think Jay will have Milam higher in the lineup. He has normally been in those top 3 in the scrimmages, so I think that's probably where he'll slide in. But in just kind of putting this down on paper, rough draft, that's what I came up with. And then I had Braswell at 9, obviously playing third. We saw Paul Maneri do this all the time. Have one of your better hitters, contact hitters especially, in that 9 hole to serve kind of as the second leadoff guy. And that was kind of my thought process with Michael Braswell being down there at 9. He hit leadoff for you a season ago. That would be ideal, an ideal situation there to potentially have back-to-back leadoff guys in a sense. If you have 9, 1, and 2 due up, that could be huge. I think Chris Stanfield could also fill that role if you want to hit Danny Dickinson lead off, things of that nature. But that is my projected lineup. I'll run through it here once again real quick. Stanfield, center. Curiel left. Jones first. Brown right. Hernandez catcher. Larson DH. Dickinson second and 7th. Milam short and 8th. Braswell third. That is my projected lineup that I am sure will not be in the correct order, but I feel pretty good about the players in it. The things that I would point out that I think will change from it, that I think I got wrong. I think Milam will obviously hit higher in the lineup. I think Josh Pearson has a shot to get the start at DH as the vet. And I think you could see Danny Dickinson lead off potentially for LSU. But there it is. Stanfield, Curiel, Jones, Brown, Hernandez, Larson, Dickinson, Milam, Braswell. We'll see how Jay lines it up. I'm sure I did not nail that from an order standpoint. One final thing to get to here. We will have a full listener Q&A here at the start of the season. I know we normally do it preseason. I'm hopeful to get it in next week. They do have a busy week again next week. They play 5 games on the second week of the season. But obviously, look, we'll see where that goes. But Ashton on Twitter did send in a question asking, beside Josh Pearson, who does Jay call on to pinch hit to get a big hit late in the game? I mean, okay, you said beside Josh Pearson because, yes, JP's obviously going to be that guy. They trust him immensely. But there's others. It's going to depend on the lineup. We kind of touched on this a little bit. The depth that they have throughout this offensive with options is huge, but it's going to be somebody they trust to really handle the bat. I mean, if Josh Pearson's in the lineup and a guy like Ashton Larson isn't, Ashton Larson's absolutely a guy they would call on in that moment and trust to go get the big hit. Look no further than the season he had a year ago, I should say. A lot of seasons there. I think you're prone to see Ethan Fry get pinch hit at bats if he's not in the lineup when LSU needs a big hit, especially with a lefty on the mound. You saw him come up with the big pinch hit double against Southeastern early in the season in 2024, which pulled LSU within 1 in the 9th, and then Fry would eventually score the winning run. So he's already kind of got a little bit of history there, right? I mean, I think those would be the top 2 that I would go with. But if Cade Arambede's not in the lineup, that's tough to ask a freshman to go in and do. But you'd also learn a lot about him in that spot. There's a lot of guys. But I would think the top 2 that I would give you, if they're not in the lineup on a given day, is Ashton Larson and Ethan Fry. One from the right side, one from the left side. So there you go, Ashton. Thank you for the question. You can always send in your questions. Open door policy, and we'll get to them. And we will have a early, let's call it early season Q&A from the listeners here as we roll along. That is a staple, and we will get that done. All right. that's going to wrap it up for today. Be sure to smash the like button, subscribe, follow on social media, subscribe again on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. Be here next time. So we got a ball club to preview. We'll get our look at Purdue, Fort Wayne, and also what we're looking for from LSU as they open up the season for their first 3-game series. That's next time on Musso at the Box.